accounting tool is an Excel-based tool that hospitals and health systems can use to calculate their Scope 3 footprint across all 15 greenhouse gas protocol categories using a spend-based methodology. And there's a really excellent how-to guide that provides a step-by-step process for not only using this tool, but the larger concepts and understanding of what a Scope 3 inventory is and does. So next, we're going to hear from Alan Eber from Gundersen Health System. And Gundersen is located in Wisconsin, so you can see we're moving east now across the country. Gundersen has been a leader in this space for a long time. In 2008, under their former CEO, Jeff Thompson, they set a goal to be energy independent. And they've been a real leader in energy efficiency and renewable energy in healthcare. So Alan is the director of facility operations at Gundersen and is responsible for energy management and conservation at all Gundersen facilities. And he is going to tell us a bit about what Gundersen has been up to.
All right, thank you, Jessica. And it is a pleasure to be part of the Destination Clean Med event that we're having right now. Yes, I am the director of facility operations currently, but before I had this position, I was heavily involved. I was our engineering and energy manager at Gundersen for a long portion of our journey to become energy independent. Now, when we talk about energy independent, Gundersen declared, or we define that for ourselves as we will generate more energy using clean renewable resources than we will use from utilities. We hit our first day of energy independence in October of 2014. So that was a milestone that took 6 years in the making. So, but before we get into more about energy, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Gundersen Health System. We are a non-for-profit organization. We are headquartered in La Crosse, Wisconsin, which is about a 50,000 person city. We are in a tri-state area of Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. We're about 8,000 employees. We're growing. It seems like every day we're growing with employees. We have about 800 providers. Our main medical center is here in La Crosse. It's a 325-bed tertiary medical center. We are also associated with 6 critical access hospitals in this tri-state region. And we have 3.6 million square feet of facilities. Now, every time I present, I share this slide, and every time I present, that number of square feet of facilities goes up and up. So, there's kind of 2 points I wanted to make with this slide. And the first one is, we are not a University of California medical center. We're not anywhere near that size, but we're not a small healthcare system as well. So we're kind of a middle-sized healthcare system, and that's given us some flexibilities to do some of the things that we've done over the past. The other thing that I wanted to say on this slide is we are a growing organization, as most healthcare systems are. So, when we talk about energy and some of the things that we've done and some of the places that we want to go, we need to take into account that growth that we certainly plan to have. Next slide, please. So the first question, in 2008, we decided to go embark upon this energy independence journey. And the question is, why did we do that? Well, we took a look back at what was going on in the world. And the first thing that we saw back in 2008 were energy costs were escalating dramatically at that time, just like they are over the last 3 or 4 months, or last year for sure. So we took a look at that and said, man, that's costing our organization a lot of money on the bottom line when you look at margin. And then when we looked at that, we certainly all know that burning of fossil fuels causes diseases in humans. And we are also in healthcare some of the worst energy offenders there are. In fact, healthcare buildings typically use about 2.5 times the energy of a normal office building. So when we looked at all of those things, it became apparent to us we are not living our mission. Our purpose is to improve the health and well-being of the patients and communities we serve. And if we are burning these fossil fuels at a very high rate, we're causing more disease, and that's not what we're trying to do. And we're also costing our patients more money to come to our facilities because of the escalating costs of energy. So we said, if we're truly going to live our mission, this is something that we have to do. We have to go down this road. Next slide, please. So we did it in 3 separate pillars, as I call them. There was the upside down triangle we saw at the last one. We have pillars, I guess. So the first one is energy conservation. Energy conservation is our existing buildings, and how do we take a look at them, and how do we reduce the energy of what we currently own and operate. The next one was sustainable design of new construction. As I said before, we are a growing organization. Our strategic mission is to continue to grow. As we grow, we need to make sure that we are doing it in a sustainable way. And the last pillar that we had was the energy generation half of this. Now, to become energy independent with as much clean renewable resources as we use, we certainly can't conserve our way to zero or design our way to zero in future construction. So we had to find ways to generate energy using renewable resources. And next slides, we're going to talk a little bit about each of these. So when we talk about conservation, we've done a lot in this area. We've tried to help some other organizations do this. We could sit and talk about all of the different steps that we've taken and all of the different features that we put into our buildings. But ultimately, when you talk about conservation, there's two things that you have to do. Number one is you have to benchmark. You have to understand, where is my building and where should it be in the region that I live in. And the next thing you have to do is you have to measure, where is this building? So if you know where to go and where to attack. And once you do that, you can identify what are the easy targets, what's the low hanging fruit, where can we do some of these strategies like LED lighting, scheduling. One of the things that we've done extraordinarily well at Gundersen is turning things off. You can't save more energy than by turning it off. Even LED lights doesn't save as much energy as turning a halogen light off. So the more you can turn off, the more energy you can save for sure. When I first came here, people didn't think that you could set things back or turn things down in hospitals. And we did an amazing job of that in our hospitals and found ways to be able to turn things off at night when they're not in use. And I've always told my entire staff, we have the best feedback system in the world. If we turn something off and a physician or a nurse gets upset about it, well, you know what? We went a little bit too far. Let's take that back now. And then we know when we're doing it right, and we know when we're not doing it right. So the feedback system is amazing inside of healthcare systems. Down in the lower right-hand corner of this slide, I'm going to bring this up now, and I'd like to bring it up a little bit later too. So when I talk about measuring and benchmarking, I'm not just talking about measuring where are you doing, but also measuring your successes. So that chart in the bottom right talks about how much are we spending in our organization on all of our utilities that we're using. And then the blue line is saying, all right, if we would not have done anything, if we wouldn't have done any conservation, done any energy generation, what would we be currently spending on our energy? And this takes into account the square footage of our buildings. It takes into account the cost of energy. And you can see in that last year, there was a huge jump up in what we would have spent because of the increase in the energy costs. So when we talk about conservation, you need to measure where you are, but you also need to measure and share the success about what you've accomplished, because this is how you continue to get support for moving forward with all of these energy initiatives that you want to do and move forward with. All right, next slide, please. So generation, again, when we said that we wanted to be energy independent, we knew we could not conserve our way to zero, so we had to find ways to generate electricity or generate power. And we've done a vast array of different ways. Some of the first things that we did was we did wind generation. So we have 2 windmill sites totaling 8 megawatts of electricity that we generate when they are running full out. We also did a landfill gas project where we partnered with a landfill that's about a mile away from one of our campuses, and they clean their methane and cool it, and then they ship it to us through a pipeline. And once we get it, we put that into an internal combustion engine where we make electricity, and we put that electricity right back out onto the grid, and they pay us a little bit for that. But we also take the heat from that engine that we're using, and we put it directly into the campus that's there. And we get enough heat off of that to basically heat both of our buildings until it gets around 10 degrees outside. But the third thing we do a tri-generation. We also take that heat, and we bought an absorption chiller for one of the buildings there. And we take that heat, we put it in an absorption chiller. So not only are we heating the building in the wintertime, but now we are cooling the building during the summertime. And I'm not going to get into how an absorption chiller works, because once upon a guy had told me it's a crime against nature how that thing works. So I don't fully understand it either, but I know you can take heat and you can make cold out of it. So that's what we do inside one of those buildings. Recently, we have gotten, or for a long period, but especially recently, we're getting very large into solar generation. Currently have about 2.5 megawatts of solar installed throughout all of our campuses. And this is a great way to produce power. It produces power when you want the power. Typically when it's sunny outside and you don't need the air conditioning, that's when we're generating most of our power. Also, very little maintenance on solar, and the paybacks on them are continuing to get a little bit better. They're to the point where it's easy for us to justify moving forward with solar. We're working with dairy digesters. So we have lots of cows in Wisconsin. Cows produce quite a bit of methane, and we found a way to take that methane and put it into a digester. And with that methane, then we take that and we turn it into electricity. And that electricity we turned around and sold back to the utilities as well. Now, the last thing that we have on here is our biomass, steam, and electricity. Our number one usage of fossil fuels was burning natural gas to supply steam to our health system, to our main campus here in La Crosse. So we said, if we're going to get to energy independence, we need to do something about that. So we installed ourselves an 800 horsepower biomass boiler. And with that, we burn clean wood from wood mills around our area. So this is wood that comes directly from wood mills. Whatever they can't make into the lumber that they're trying to use, the waste product, they chip that up for us. We purchase it from them. They bring it to us, and that's what we burn to heat our hospitals with. This is a bi-generation system. So we make steam to provide steam to all of our facilities in La Crosse. But a byproduct of that is we take that steam and we put it through a steam turbine generator and make electricity that we put directly into our buildings. Next slide, please. So I was asked to talk about some of the challenges as we walk down this journey. And one of the challenges that we had is, you probably heard me say a couple of times, we sell back to the utilities. With a lot of these larger renewable energy projects that we've run, we didn't have an outlet for the power that we were generating on our campuses. But we told ourselves, as long as we're putting that electricity back on the grid, that's less fossil fuels that have to be burned to produce that electricity. So we were able to do that. And then early on, we were able to partner with our utilities, and they were giving us a fair rate for the electricity that we sent back to them. But what this chart is showing is, the red line on this is how much we pay for electricity. And the green line on here is how much we get paid from the utilities on the electricity that we made. So you can see in 2008, it was a pretty good deal for us to do this. But as time went on, we got paid less for the electricity that we made, and we were paying more for the electricity that we made. So this really forced us, in a financially challenging situation, to kind of change our strategies and our goals and what we were trying to accomplish. So can you go to the next slide, please? So what we've done is we've modified our goals. We no longer are saying that we want to be totally energy independent the way that we did before. What we're calling it now is we want site-based energy independence. So we've taken every building that we own, every piece of facility that we own and operate, and we said, what is the energy usage should that be on an average building? And we said we want to use 50% less energy than what a typical building would use for this area. And you can see that green line there is our 12-month rolling average for that energy usage. We started off about a year ago at 38%, and we're climbing our way up to 42.1%. So, the purpose of why I'm showing this is to be flexible when we move forward. There are new challenges that pop up all the time, and we need to make sure that we are changing what we're looking at and how we measure ourselves and what are we trying to do, so that we set up goals that actually drive the type of actions that we would like to drive. And this was a goal that we had to change because financially, what we were doing before was not going to be very sustainable for our organization. Next slide, please. So the second half of the goal that we created was all of our new construction, we want to be net zero, which means we will find a way as we build a new building to offset all of the energy usage in that building. So ultimately, there is no load put on the grid from us. So we are currently in the process of building about a 9,000 square foot clinic in a little town of Elroy. And we are on a path right now to make that an energy independent building. It'll be an on-site energy independent building. We are also building a critical access hospital up in a town just north of La Crosse. It's about 67,000 square feet, and we're looking to make that an energy independent building as well. That's going to be a little bit more challenging, as hospitals always are, but we have a path that's right now, I think our designs show us to be about 10% off of being the energy independence. But as we do this, we've created a very robust process for how do we build new buildings? How do we go through that process to make sure that energy is being included, that we're setting targets? And the first thing that we do is we set very aggressive targets for our buildings. We will never build a building that uses more than 50% of what an average building in our region uses. That's just not an option for all of our architects and contractors to achieve. I'll segue here a little bit and tell a story. Back in 2000, I think it was 10 or 8, it was 2008, we'll call it. We built a small clinic, a 9,000 square foot clinic, and we told our architects we want this to be we want it to be an energy, use little energy, a very, 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 very efficient building. So they went forward and they put in all kinds of different features for us. They put daylight harvesting features in there. They put daylight sensing features in there, a couple other little features that they put in there. And they said, okay, you got an energy efficient building. Well, we went and turned that building on, and it was our least efficient building that we owned on a square footage basis. So we said to ourselves, how could this possibly happen? And we came back and said, well, we didn't really give them what we wanted. We just told them kind of a direction to go, but we didn't give them a target to shoot for. So now every building we build has a specific target that they will shoot for. And the way that we manage that is we do energy modeling on every building before it gets built. As we're going through the design process, we have an energy modeler that we hire, and they will go through and predict, okay, with this type of design, with this HVAC system, with this fenestration, here's where you can expect your energy usage to be. So that gives us the opportunity to make changes to the design as it's being designed, so that we can make sure that we hit our targets and do it at a cost-effective way. We may make some trade-offs because this is more expensive than that, so it might trade off how we decide to get there. Next slide, please. So this was a project that followed that process, and we had extremely good success with it. So this is a Sparta Clinic that we built in 2016, 35,000 square foot building. You can see the services that we had in there, and it was designed and built to be an energy neutral building. So the one thing I wanted to show on this is when you talk about energy efficiency, and especially when in facilities, I put this little lever over here. I show this in most of my presentations because I think it's a really powerful description. When you talk about energy usage inside of buildings, the best way to reduce energy is in the concept phase. What are the big features that we're going to use? What are the big concepts that we want to use inside of this building to achieve those targets? So that has the most power as far as increasing your energy and efficiency. And as you get farther down the right, this is almost a timeline, okay? You've got the concepts that you want. Here's a design. Once you're in the design, you still have a lot of power for what equipment you select. How is this going to be laid out? And then you get into the construction phase where you still get some leverage in there, but it gets less and less. And then finally, once you have a building up and operational, you still have some leverage on how you can increase efficiency, but it's not quite as strong. Now, the other half of this lever that you're seeing is how much money it costs you. You know, when you are operating a hospital and you want to make significant changes to increase your efficiency, it is very expensive to do work inside of an operating hospital to make some of these changes that need to be made. So the earlier you can get on the construction of a new building or a remodel of a new building, the better off you are as far as improving your energy efficiency of that building. Next slide, please. All right, so the other thing you need to do when you talk about designing energy and building energy and efficient buildings is you need to know where that energy is coming from. Now, I'm not going to go over this slide in great detail, but it does show where most of the energy is being used inside of these facilities, especially in a region like Wisconsin. So heat is the biggest energy usage that we have here in Wisconsin. Reheat is 42% of all the energy used comes from reheat. Preheat, which is heating the air up from the outside, is about 3.5% of all the energy usage. So when you add all of these things up, that is the one area that you need to tackle. But when you build and try to design for 50% energy usage of what a typical building is, you got to attack all of these things. And we have on this slide ways that we've attacked all of that. And some of these things really you can only do in new construction, and some of these things you can do in existing construction. I have night watchmen up there. I'm not sure if anybody knows what that means, but what that is that's a program that will You can hook up into your network, and it will shut all of your computers down after a certain period of time in your building. So you don't have to count on your staff for turning the computers off. It will do it itself. And this is something that we do in all of our new construction. It's something that we do in all of our buildings. It's just a way to say, all right, how do we turn this off? Because we know turning it off is better than reduce or creating ways to reduce less energy. All right, next slide, please. So we talked in the slide before about the reheat and the heat being the number one source or usage of energy. Now, I could geek out on this slide for a long time. I'm sure, maybe Anna and I will geek out on this a little bit later. But what I'm showing here is the method that we used in that Sparta Clinic to eliminate or tackle that reheat usage. So in every building that we build, since 2013, we have used geothermal wells. So what does that mean? That means that we use a well down in the earth, and that's where we grab our heat from, and we transport it from the earth, and we put that into our buildings. Now, in the wintertime or in the summertime, we do the exact opposite. We take the heat from the building, and we put that right back down into the earth. So if you can almost think of that as a battery, as a thermal battery. And this is how we heat our building. In fact, that Sparta Clinic, that 35,000 square foot clinic, we have no natural gas come into that building at all. Now, that's neat, and we heard them do that in California. But when you talk about Wisconsin and the temperatures getting to 30 below, to not have any natural gas in that building at all was a pretty big stretch, and took a little bit of convincing for the staff there that we could make that happen. But we've been running that building since 2016, and we have had no issues keeping that building warm in the summer, or cool in the summertime and warm in the wintertime. The other thing that we did in that building, one of the things that you saw in that pie slice, if you go back and take a look at it sometime, is the transportation of air. You have to move air all through these buildings, especially in healthcare. That is a major energy usage, supplying the air exchanges that's required. So what we did in this building is we said, how do we minimize that? So instead of having a central air handler where you'd have to take air from one corner of the building, bring it all the way back to the air handler, and then condition it, and then put it all the way back to that corner again, what we said is, let's keep the air right where it is, and let's condition the air where it's located. So in this building, we have over 30 water source heat pumps that take the place of VAVs inside of a building. So the air comes into these heat pumps right where it is. We condition the air using these heat pumps coupled into the geothermal well, and then put it right back. So we not only are utilizing our geothermal well, we're sharing heat and cooling between the building, but we're also minimizing the amount of air that we distribute throughout that building. We're still delivering the air exchanges, but it's not having to transport nearly as far. Next slide, please. So again, I was asked to talk about some challenges. In every healthcare system that we talk with, the major challenge towards walking down this road is the financial challenge. I'm showing a chart here in the upper right-hand corner. This was our investment into all of our energy initiatives. And you can see that over the course of about 13 years, we've invested over $40 million in our energy initiatives. But the other half of this is all of these, we told ourselves as we started this, we are not going to make our patients pay for our energy goals. This is our mission. Our patients shouldn't have to pay for this. So everything that we've done, we've said we are going to have a payback on this. So as you see that red line, that is the payback that we've been getting as a result of the energy projects that we've done. And back in the middle of last year, we finally hit a break-even point. So we have recouped every dollar that we put into our energy initiatives after a 13 and a half year payback. And now moving forward, we are money ahead because of the investments that we've made in our energy. So people say, how in the world did you guys get to do that? How did your organization say, yes, this is a good thing to invest into? Well, the first thing that we did is we made small investments. And with these small investments, we showed the organization the payback on these and the effect that we were having to our operational margin. And with those small wins, they started to give us a little bit more confidence that we knew what we were doing and gave us a little more money. The other thing that we do is when we talk about these energy initiatives, we talk about margin. We don't talk about savings. So if you put in a new piece of a new MRI that brings in more services, you're going to get more revenue from those sales. But when you talk about your margin, if you have a 5% margin for a healthcare organization, which in today's day and age is extraordinarily good, you would have to bring in $20 worth of sales for every $1 worth of savings that you have. So every dollar we save on these energy initiatives goes directly to our margin. And when you talk about it that way with the CFOs, they understand that, and then they start to get behind this. The other thing that we talk about is we separate the capital from the operational dollars. Healthy healthcare organizations, financially healthy healthcare organizations do have money, and they're invested somewhere. They're invested in stocks and bonds and wherever it might be. Well, one of the ways you can invest your capital money is in things that pay back on the operational side. So what we've shown here is a perfect example of how do you invest back into your organization instead of in stocks and bonds that will benefit society, benefit our patients and our communities, and pay our organization back over the long haul. So when we talk about those three things, all of our financial people that we work with understand what we're doing and support that direction. But the biggest thing when you talk about financials and how to get your organization behind it is you have to tie it back to what is your mission. I think Anna did a great job talking about their mission and what they want to do moving forward in the University of California. And it certainly, that's the way that we got our board of directors and everybody at Gundersen to get aligned with us. We said, we are here to improve the health and well-being of our communities. We want to reduce the cost of healthcare. If we are going to live our mission, this is what we need to do towards that strategy. And once you tie it back to your mission, now people have to start to argue why you wouldn't do this instead of why you would do this. And that has been a major factor in why we've been so successful over the years. Next slide, please. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you for sharing your leading work and also really talking about what the strategy is and all of those important pieces of tying it to the mission and understanding the different hooks for the different people you're talking to within an organization. And the financial approach is really important. We're going to pivot now to the resilience pillar. But as I mentioned before, all of these pillars are really intersecting and connecting. So we're going to hear from Boston Medical Center about a lot of their work in resilience, but they've also made great strides in mitigation, which have made them more resilient. So before I introduce our BMC presenters, I want to share two important white papers that we've published on climate resilience for your reference. In 2018, we published a paper called Safe Haven in the Storm, Protecting Lives and Margins with Climate Smart Healthcare. And this paper presents a business case for investing in climate resilience. It looks at the cost of being ill-prepared for climate impacts and the benefits of resilience, and it makes those points through case studies. And that paper set out a 4-point action plan to manage extreme weather events, to reduce emissions, to invest in community resilience, and to lead on policy. After writing that paper, we identified a need to develop a shared framework for health systems for thinking about community climate resilience and the role that healthcare institutions should play. And our new white paper, Climate Resilience for Healthcare and Communities, does just that. So it provides a framework for building climate resilient health systems and communities, and it explores how healthcare institutions can leverage their investments to support equitable decarbonization and build community resilience, health, and wealth. And on the next slide, you'll see a graphic from that paper, and it really shows the different types of resilience that are all necessary for both health systems and communities to become and stay climate resilient. So we need our health facilities and operations prepared for continued service, both during and after extreme weather events. We need the public infrastructure to be able to withstand disaster, so staff and patients can take care of themselves both at home and be able to get to healthcare facilities. And we need to address the underlying determinants of health and build strong social connections to reduce climate impact and enable communities to withstand and recover from adversity. We know this is a responsibility for health systems. This is our mission, but it's also in our own economic self-interest to invest in the health of our communities. Boston Medical Center has a case study featured in this new paper, And they are a leader in helping define the role of a health system as an anchor institution, working in partnership with their community to make sure the community is healthy, safe, and climate resilient. So the next portion of our presentation, you're going to hear from Dave Maffeo. Next slide, please. Who is the Senior Director of Support Services. And Dave oversees food and nutrition, environmental services, patient transport, the interpreter service, and guest support services. And he also leads the preventive food pantry, the teaching kitchen, and BMC's very famous rooftop farm. And on the next slide, I'm going to introduce Dr. Megan Sandell. And Dr. Sandell is the co-lead principal investigator with Children's Health Watch, the co-director of the GROW Clinic at Boston Medical Center, and an associate professor of pediatrics at the Boston University Schools of Medicine and Public Health. And Dave is going to start us out.
All right, great. Hello, everyone. You know, the one good thing, I was texting Megan during this and said, you know, we're running a little short on time. The good thing about being an Italian from Boston is I can make up that time. So we're going to motor on. And I'm going to spend my time talking about our sustainable journey and really the why. And this is very similar to what Alan said this first slide. But just to set the stage, you know, the healthcare industry accounts for 10% of greenhouse gas emissions, 10% of smog formation, and 9% of other harmful air pollutants. So this is the main community we serve, as you see in this graph. So just to give an example of this, so the city of Dorchester, which we are right in the heart of, the asthma rates in the city of Dorchester are 18%, and the rest of Boston is 11%. So we owe it to the community we serve to be better stewards to the environment. Another estimate is that pollution created by our industry has also caused a loss of 614,000 disability life years annually. And it's not proportionate, which I'm going to get into the next slide, please. So to further add context, as you can see on this slide, why we need to be better, you know, there were further reports conducted by the Environmental Research Collaborative that show those living in white communities having a 1.8% chance of living in the most hazardous environmental communities in Mass, as opposed to those living in communities of color have a 70.6% chance. So, you know, again, we owe it to the community we serve to be better. So next slide, I'm going to speak to the journey that we're on, and it's never finished. So we've been nationally recognized, as Jessica mentioned, for our research and programs of promoting health equity. We know based on our patient population and the community we serve, our vision, you know, we need to think outside the box beyond traditional clinical care, and you can hear that from Megan as well. If we want to improve the overall health and well-being of the community we serve, we really had to invest into our physical environment and carbon emissions. And our goal was always to be carbon neutral, and I'll speak to that during this presentation. So next slide, please. So what really kicked us off is we went through a campus consolidation. You know, those of you that don't know Boston Medical Center, it used to be 2 physical buildings. Way back when it was a university hospital and there was one campus called the City Hospital. We merged, but we were still 2 physical buildings. So emergency rooms on both sides, different services on each side. So it's pretty inefficient. We had ambulances going literally a block that we would spend $2 million a year to do. So we made the decision really back in 2013. Bob Biggio, who's our Senior Vice President of Facilities and Support Services, created the vision, you know, to put us all under one roof, which is the old City Hospital. And as Alan mentioned, and Anna mentioned, you know, a lot of the time it's better from an expense standpoint to use the infrastructure you're in. So we, instead of demolishing the building, we used the Menino campus, which is a city campus, to create this vision of energy efficiency. So, you know, to do this, we had to go to the board and really show them energy efficiency and how we were going to pay for that. So it was really the cornerstone of our plan. And as you can see on this slide, you know, $20 to $25 million a year were diverted based on this decision. So that really helped us get it done and create the changes we needed to do. We didn't have to duplicate, different services. The renovation of the ORs, and you'll hear more about that in this presentation. It really allowed us to do all the work we wanted to do that could allow us to operate efficiently for the next hundreds of years. And also, I just want to mention that we financed the campus redesign project by issuing the first green bonds by any hospital in the US. So that's a key piece to this. Next slide, please. So as Jessica mentioned, this is our rooftop farm. So we get a lot of discussion around this on why we did this. So we have a therapeutic food pantry. It was the first of its kind in the country that opened back in 2000 for our food insecure patients. So in 2016, we said, wouldn't it be great? And it was a simple conversation to grow our own food for our patients. So that was in April 2016. In April 2017, not only was great, we were in business. So you can see on the picture on the top left, that's the third floor of our power plant building. It's 2,300 milk crates with Vermont composting soil, each with its own irrigation, growing 25 different vegetables for our patients in our food pantry. We also use the food in our teaching kitchen. We also have a farmer's market that we do for our employees in our community. And we're also using the food on our patient tray. So if we're growing spinach, we tell the patient we're just growing it right outside your window. They can see the farm. So it's been really a great story for us from a resiliency standpoint. And I will add that we have 100,000 honeybees. And with that honey, we use it to recognize our employees. And there's also other sustainability benefits. You can see on the bottom of the slide, the heat island effect that reduces that effect. The roof lasts 2 to 3 times longer when you have a green roof. So there are other benefits other than why we did it for the food from a sustainability story. So next slide, please. Also around 2017, this is a picture of our Yawkey building. It's a hybrid ambulatory care and inpatient building. So this houses our mother-baby floors. You see on the top, so we installed a cogeneration plant, which is another sustainable improvement for us. Saved about $1 million per year compared to 30% of conventional power plants. Cogen operates at 70% efficiency. Since 2017, the cogen plant has provided 43% of our electrical needs and 30% of our heat. And currently we're at 96% carbon neutral for energy. And another key reason why we did this, talking about the community we serve, is, it has black start capability, which allows us to operate off the grid. So God forbid the, electricity goes down, we're able to sustain power within our building. Next slide, please. So we also want to make sure as we were going through that campus consolidation, that we instilled this vision with our staff. So, this is a picture of our very busy OR at Boston Medical Center. And I would say probably the best champions of change, as you see in this picture, in terms of diversion capacity. So they do a great job in making sure we divert what we should divert versus going to a landfill. We've also replaced desflurane with sevoflurane, which has a smaller carbon footprint. 38%, as you see in this picture, of this stuff would have went to our landfill, but it's diverted every day. All our lighting has been converted to LED, which is 50 to 80% more efficient over traditional. And then we also have a biodigester at BMC in our kitchen. So about 4 tons of food waste per month funnels to our biodigester versus the waste stream. Next slide. Also around the same time, 2017 was a very busy year. In partnership with MIT and Post Office Square, we enabled the construction of Summit Farms, which is a 650-acre, 60-megawatt solar installation in North Carolina. It's the largest renewable energy project ever built in the U.S. to an alliance of diverse buyers. The purchase is equivalent to 100% of our electric consumption. And through the course of this agreement, we expect 146 gigawatt hours of emission-free power, which results in 119, you can see on this slide, 119,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide diverted. So next slide, please. And I'm very excited to talk about this building. So This is kind of our latest and greatest building that we're putting in place. So on October 1st, it'll open its doors. It's a behavioral health building, our first time opening one. We are very fortunate to have a generous donor who knows the work that we do around sustainability that said, oh, we want to help you do the work here as well, who donated $6 million, which will allow us to be a net zero building on day one. So this building, it'll have 56 inpatient beds, 28 clinical stabilization beds for patients with substance use disorder. We're upgrading the building with high performance windows and installation. We're installing 150 kilowatt of rooftop solar and 300 kilowatt of solar parking canopies. And as Alan mentioned, we're also in the geothermal heating and cooling space. So we have 88 of these built onto the property that will allow us to be net zero when we open. And, we are also expanding our farm. So because of the success of the farm at BMC, we want to do the same thing for our patients from a therapeutic standpoint in Brockton. So we're opening a smaller version of the farm, which will kick off in 2023 next season. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to transition to Megan, who is going to talk about our economic resilience work in inclusion in the city of Boston. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dave. It's amazing always to tag team. We're so proud of the work that we do at BMC. I'll just have a few slides and then we'll be able to turn it over for opening up for questions. I think we really view as Boston Medical Center that part of our supporting resilience is through local food sourcing, place-based investing, particularly in BIPOC wealth creation and local job development. And this is part of a larger healthcare anchor network approach that we at BMC have been part of almost since the inception of that network, looking at inclusive local hiring, inclusive local sourcing, place-based investing, and then obviously investing a lot in housing for health. If you go to the next slide, we just have a handful of examples of what we're doing in this space. One is that we have kicked off a collaborative called the Boston Opportunity System Collaborative. This was established with a generous donation from the JP Morgan Chase Foundation Advancing Cities Grant, where we're looking at both housing and commercial wealth building as important. And so we're actually helping establish a new grocery store in Nubian Square, which is in Roxbury. So if you remember Dave's map of Dorchester, Roxbury neighborhood is right next to the Dorchester neighborhood, historically disinvested, predominantly African-American neighborhood. And so we're actually establishing a grocery store that actually is going to be a halal market, serving the 30 to 40,000 Muslims in the greater Boston area. And it's part of a transit-oriented development at the old Bartlett station, which was actually a bus depot in that neighborhood that now is being put into multi-purpose housing. The next slide is we're also thinking a lot about local source food production and ways in which gentrification doesn't push out local businesses. And so one of these examples is City Fresh Foods, which is located in the Roxbury neighborhood right now. They currently make 15,000 meals a day for seniors, students, young children, food insecure families. Most of the employees live in Roxbury and the nearby neighborhoods. And so this business is a really key part of the local food ecosystem, but they currently lease their building and their rent has gone up 150% in the last 5 years. And so they're really at risk of being displaced because of real estate prices pushing them out of the neighborhood. And so next slide, what we're excited to announce is that we're going to actually help invest in being able to help them purchase a building across the street from where they are right now. They're going to be able to purchase the current facility there, be able to renovate it with additional financing from the city, state, and other tax credits. And that will establish them so they have ownership in the Roxbury neighborhood. It'll allow them to have a custom designed facility so it increases their production capacity and supports their long-term growth. So you're able to have locally sourced and local food delivery so that you're not incurring carbon footprint that way. And I think what's most exciting to us is it's going to maintain those current 150 jobs allow for the creation of 85 more jobs, and they're committing to living wages according to the MIT calculator. And what they're able to do is not only be able to do skill development, help people on managerial track, they're also establishing worker ownership. And so we're thinking of this as the triple win, right? It's local sourced food, BIPOC wealth creation, and decreasing and increasing community resiliency. And so we're just really excited about this as another aspect of the resilience work that we can do. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica. Thanks.
Thank you, Megan. And let's just stay with you for a second, because this is really complex work and it's shared solutions. And it's a place that we're seeing so many health systems across the country trying to figure this out. So tell us a little more about how you're thinking about the strategies, priorities, and the metrics that you're looking to evaluate this work as you think about this framework for place-based economic inclusion and resilience work.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jessica. I think that more and more we have tried to look at this in a structural sense. So, honestly, if you look at the maps, and Dave in his part of the demonstrated this, right? We know that there is concentrated inequities in a lot of communities. And so as we think about the structural factors that underline that, it is because of historical disinvestment. It can go back to redlining in the 1930s and who was able to accrue wealth and who wasn't. And so as we think about new investment models, more and more we are focused on investing in models where it's not designed to make money. It's not meant to be extractive. Most investing is around, you invest money to make money. We are really looking at models that are non-extractive. It's money that we're making available so that people are able to generate their own wealth, not our wealth, right? So non-extractive is one principle. We're also thinking about anti-displacement. So we are really interested in ownership. So not just investing in, say, an affordable housing development, maybe we're investing in a community land trust where it stays affordable in perpetuity, and it's something that people can have ownership stakes in it developing in the future. And then I do think that we are very focused on BIPOC wealth creation, and there have to be ways in which those BIPOC wealth creations are part of it. I think food is one area that is really important, but I think there are a lot of economic development opportunities that can be afforded where we as institutions can be those institutional backers and get people to sustainable contracts and other things so that they're able to create new ecosystems. So thanks for the question.
Thank you. And it makes me think about some of the local investment and local businesses that really sprung up through COVID, making hand sanitizer for hospitals, masks, those kind of things. Thank you. So we got a lot of good questions. Let's go back up to Anna at UCSF. Thinking about achieving this net zero, we know the grid's been super unreliable in California on and off in past a few years. So talk a little bit about the challenges of moving to electrification.
Yeah, absolutely. Big topic of conversation for sure. As we approach the summer again and hear that our electricity sources are likely to be very heavily taxed. For UC San Francisco Health specifically, I mentioned, we actually are one of the campuses that has a natural gas-fired cogeneration facility, and that has provided an added level of electric reliability over the years. And that's one of the greatest advantages that it provides. So as part of the plans for the new hospital, we actually are planning to add a third electric feed from the utility grid that comes, hopefully, decision not yet made, but hopefully from a different substation within the city of San Francisco than our current ones come from. So that will provide an added level of electric reliability, at least for locally, notwithstanding what happens outside of the San Francisco grid area. But that's a heavy emphasis and something that will be important for us should we really go down this path of shutting down that cogeneration plant. We, of course, are leaning heavily on our code mandated emergency generators. And I know that there was a question in the feed about that and about diesel. Big topic of conversation. We haven't yet shifted away from diesel storage for diesel emergency generation. But I think that will be something that'll be coming down the line. It's a lesser emphasis for us at the moment because it is a much less percentage of our total greenhouse gas emissions, and we're really targeting the big hits first. But it's definitely a major challenge when it comes to electrification. I guess that brings me to another thought, which is that when you switch from natural gas or any kind of fossil fuel generated heating to electric heating, California code requires that that system now be on emergency power. So that's a significant added load to our emergency power systems. And so that's a big challenge for reliability and really a cost, an added cost that wasn't necessarily part of the anticipated core system cost.
Thank you. And I think that really, is at the intersection of codes and regulations as well. Hospitals are required to have 96 hours of backup by diesel. And until we see that shift, until we see storage capacity and different options. So it's one of the reasons we need folks working inside the facilities, and then we need folks educating administration officials and policymakers and the Joint Commission so we can see regulations and programs and incentives starting to support the decarbonization work that needs to get done, because it's complicated for hospitals. Electrifying is complicated, and backup is also complicated. So, Alan, let me bring a question to you. One of the questions that was interesting was, how are you anticipating some of the changes you're going to see because of climate change in Wisconsin? So as it gets warmer, is that affecting how you're thinking about your plans?
Well, there are days that we would welcome that in Wisconsin, that's for sure. But ultimately, it has not affected our plans as of yet. We still have design days when you design buildings, and those have not changed. So we still need to design them for the coldest times. One of the things that I would say that we may be seeing that we haven't seen before is more humidity. The last few summers with global warming, we've seen more humidity in our region. So we are being a little bit more cautious and probably designing in a little more chilled water capability or air conditioning capability just to remove the humidity from where we're seeing it. The other half of that is the codes in hospitals are getting more and more stringent on humidities and monitoring humidities. So, along with us feeling like we're getting a little more humid here in this area, codes are getting a little bit more stringent too. So, it's kind of a double whammy effect, and either adding or removing humidity is very energy intensive. So, I'd say right now that's probably the biggest place that we're seeing it.
So for those of us that don't understand all those energy processes, my understanding is for the OR where you want really cold air, after you cool that air, you often have to reheat it to get the humidity out. So as there's more humidity outside, all that becomes more energy intensive?
Yeah, anytime you have to remove or add, water to air, it's very expensive to do that, or it takes a lot of energy to convert that from a solid to a liquid, or a liquid to a solid, or not a liquid to solid, a solid to a vapor, or a vapor to a liquid. So that becomes very energy intensive. And like you said, when you take humidity out, that means instead of supplying 55-degree air to your room, there's sometimes you need to take that down to 50-degree air to get the humidity out, and then reheat that back up. So you have to cool it down farther and then heat it back up so you get the comfort level. So there's lots of ways that affects energy usage inside of buildings.
Well, you engineers have your work cut out for you for sure. Dave, let's talk a little more about this wonderful rooftop farm. So many hospitals and health systems have been interested in this, and I know you entertain lots of calls and lots of tours. Tell us a little more about how how it happened, maybe some of the unexpected benefits, but also how you'd advise others who are interested in doing this work. What are the challenges? What are the things you might do differently or lessons learned?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned in the presentation, we came up with the idea in April. I think, what helped us here is, and Megan spoke to it too. Our patients have, when you look at social determinants of health, transportation issues, housing issues. So food insecurity is a great issue for our patient population. So I think the timeline, again, this thing opened up, a year later, really is because who we are from a medical center standpoint. So we had to first assess the building to see if we needed a new roof. What were the funds that were necessary for us? For us, just to let everybody know, it cost us $300,000 to get this thing going year one. 200,000 of that was a roof, though. So because we were using a very large roof, so we had to secure the funds, which, by the way, were all paid through philanthropy. All of our programs, Pantry, Teaching Kitchen, Farm, we have some generous donors that help us support those programs. So it was all from philanthropy. We have an annual fundraiser called Food for Thought Dinner. We put that on the docket and we raise that money in one night. So we're very fortunate to get the money that fall of 2016 to be able to go to 2017. But the other key thing, I'm not a farmer, Bob's not a farmer. You really need some expertise. So John Stoddard, who Jessica knows well, he's a colleague, Practice Green Health, Healthcare Without Harm. He had a rooftop garden in the Seaport District. So it was kind of like a perfect storm. I went to see he brought on a company called Recover Green Roof. So they brought us to Fenway Park. Those of you from the Boston area, if you go to the Fenway Park farm, it's the same as a BMC one. We went with that model. So it's really having somebody that has that expertise to manage it as well. So we have an on-site farm manager, Lindsay Allen. We also have a couple assistants that help her. But, really the thing that surprised me the most, I knew we wanted to do it for the food for the pantry. Two things. So one was the amazing feedback we had from the employees at BMC, how excited they were we were doing this for our patients and our community. So it was a long list of volunteers. We had plenty of volunteers. That was one thing. The other thing is, and it really kind of came out of maybe the first growing seasons. We're about to enter our sixth growing season. When Lindsay came up with the idea of putting some videos online to help those in our community to garden on their own. So we're talking about resiliency. How can we, in an urban desert like Boston, not a lot of farms in Boston. So how can we create an infrastructure where people are confident enough to go to our website or come visit us and learn how to farm? So I think that was the other added benefit that I didn't really think about when we were trying to do this, but it's definitely doable. Like I tell everybody that tours us or calls me around it, where there's a will, there's a way. And, the funding obviously is the biggest piece that a lot of facilities, kind of stops them in their tracks. If you have that funding source through development or philanthropy and they're a partner of yours, you can definitely get it done. And like I said, we got it done in a year. There's a couple other facilities that I've networked with. They don't have a farm on the roof of their hospital, but they might have one next to their hospital because of the work that we've done here. Same thing with the pantry. A few of those have popped up across the country because of our work. So.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope we see more and more of them. Anna, back to you. You talked about biogas and some of the price point issues, and I think it's one of the many elements of our transition that's sometimes controversial, renewable natural gas and what's happening there. Tell us a little more how you see it. Is it a bridge solution? How do you envision this as we move forward in healthcare, renewable energy?
Yeah, and as I answer, it will be my personal perspective. I'm thinking of it as a bridge solution, but a bridge solution that we may need to rely on for quite some time. The way I see it is this space heating and the domestic hot water needs, just from a basic thermodynamic perspective, can be met pretty effectively with the concepts that Alan and I discussed: heat recovery chilling, heat pump chilling, geothermal, et cetera. And so to me, that's the highest priority for targeting. Steam is a bit more challenging. And so the way I see our path at University of California is that it will make the most sense to target the space heating and domestic hot water heating to be completely off of biogas initially. And we may need to rely on that biogas for our steam generation for a while. But in the long term, yeah, I see it as a bridging technology. I mean, we should be putting it into the pipeline. We should be using those resources. But when you look at the total natural gas consumption of the country, biogas is not going to be able to replace it entirely. And I think that's kind of the key point. Even if we do it, it won't allow everyone to do it. So it can't be, the ultimate solution across the board.
Great, thank you. Ellen, I have an easy one for you. You talked about using a third-party modeler, and there was a question whether does your architecture and engineering firm provide the energy models, or are you using a separate third party to do that energy modeling for your new building?
We typically use a third party. When we did that Sparta building, we hired a third party to do that, and it does a couple of things for us. One, it gives kind of a checks and balances on the design, and it also gets another engineer getting into the details of the design, so they can come up with different options that the designers don't come up with. So it gives us a second set of eyes, provides us with a little more options. But the other thing we found is when we turned the building on and ran it, he was right. So the model predicted the building extremely well. So once we got confirmation that his modeling was correct, we stayed with that individual because he was right. And I don't know that they all are.
That's great. And we only have a couple minutes left. I think I will just do a round robin of kind of last thoughts or comments. And Dr. Sandell, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that one of the cool things that you saw with BMC is that with the right intentionality, we were able to increase patient volume, but decrease our overall costs and decrease our carbon footprint at the same time. And I think that in a lot of ways, as we think about that intentionality, and you've heard it from the UC system and from the Gundersen system, it is possible to do it. And then I think the next extension is it's not just about your facilities, it's about your larger community and how do you start to bring that economic benefits in a larger scale. And I think that this is possible. I think that we, especially at critical access, or we call it safety net hospitals, we have to take $1 and stretch it and braid it and make it work. But it is possible. And we're just really excited to continue to learn more at Clean Med at Kansas City. So thank you.
Thanks for the plug, Megan. Anna, last thoughts.
Sure. I think that my major sort of shift in thinking over the last year is that our targets are actually achievable, that we can do this. I wasn't convinced of that, I would say, a couple of years ago, looking at healthcare. I came from the non-healthcare world originally, and I saw the feasibility of it outside of healthcare, but healthcare was really held to this standard of, oh my gosh, we just have to provide, X, Y, and Z at all times, and can that really be done, and should we really be making shifts that compromise that? And I think I'm fully convinced at this point that we don't have to compromise our patient care or our patient safety, and in fact, it's part of patient care and patient safety to do this work. And I'm proud that the UC system is really starting to shift in that direction. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. And Alan?
Well, because I have no original thoughts of my own, I'm going to echo what both Megan and Anna said. Megan is right on. We call it two-sided green. This is not something that you have to spend money to do, or you have to transfer money to your patients to do this. I think we've shown that over the years extremely well. We have climate issues, we have health issues, but we also have financial issues in healthcare. And to put that burden on our patients is not the right path forward. And there are ways to do that without burdening the patients that seek healthcare. I think Anna was also correct. This is not going down these roads isn't easy, and not everybody's behind you. It takes persistence to get this done, and it's the right journey. We're doing the right things, and it takes persistence to make sure that it happens. So,
Well, thank you all for your leadership. We are so grateful for the work you're doing and that you're part of our U.S. Healthcare Climate Council. I will turn it over to Hillary to wrap us up.
Thanks, Jessica. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Before we let you go, we just wanted to remind you of another upcoming virtual event. Please join us on June 16th for our part 3 of our Grand Round virtual series, Clinical Sustainability, How Data and Collaboration Advance Climate Smart Clinical Practice. You may register for this event as well as CleanMed 2022 at cleanmed.org. Thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in Kansas City. And on behalf of Practice Green Health and Healthcare Without Harm, have a safe rest of your week. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.